So as we're rolling into April, recruiting is really starting to take form. And today, we need to talk about a four-star offensive lineman in Brycen Sanders coming in as a top 300 player in the nation, specifically number 270 overall, releasing his top four. We need to get into the four institutions involved and why he's so key to each one of these schools. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. And given that Brycen Sanders is from Tennessee, and that Tennessee is one of the four schools, do you believe that the other three institutions will be able to successfully lift him from Tennessee? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below, as those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's hop right into this, because this is going to be a battle we need to keep an eye on, and particularly because of the four institutions involved. But before we can go any further in breaking down this battle, we first have to understand these four institutions, being the Tennessee Volunteers, the Oklahoma Sooners, the Ole Miss Rebels, and the LSU Tigers. And one of the things you'll notice is that three of those four schools are presently located in the SEC, which is kind of intriguing to me, considering that the other day we talked about Tony Mitchell, who released his top five, where four of the five schools were located in the SEC. And the last one being Oregon. The difference between the Tony Mitchell situation and what we have here is that OU is on their way to the SEC. It's a matter of when, not if. And so because of that, all four of these schools will inevitably be playing in the same conference. That's kind of just a non-useful tidbit to know, but one that I found intriguing. Moving forward to the more useful stuff, though, is why all of these four institutions are one to watch and why Brycen Sanders is so key for each of these institutions. And we can start with the latter, and that's not going to take a whole lot of time. You're talking about a top 300 player in the nation, someone that should be a priority to every college in the nation that has that position as a position group of need. And when we talk about the offensive line, I can double down there, because I am of the mindset you can't have too many quality offensive linemen. You just can't. Competition is healthy, iron sharpens iron, and having a stable of guys in that room is only going to be a net positive going forward. That's a position group where it takes time to come in from the high school game and develop into the college level in terms of strength, speed, and understanding of technique and schematics. It's a very difficult position to just plug and play straight out of high school. We've seen it done, but it's just very difficult. So I'm of the mindset that you can never have too many great offensive linemen. But for these four programs in particular, you're looking at Tennessee, who's really looking to try and take hold on some hype they've received with the commitment of a five-star quarterback. Not only a five-star quarterback, but one of the best quarterbacks in this class. Some people have him as the number one quarterback in this class, depending on how you rate them. Regardless, he's one of the top players in the nation. And one of the things I always talk about, I talk about this at length, those kind of guys, those high-ranking quarterbacks, they generate a lot of excitement. And that's something that we have to watch for Tennessee, because with the commitment of Nico Iamaleava, you can bet your bottom dollar that that's going to create waves in the recruiting sphere, and we're going to see individuals commit to Tennessee because of the presence of Nico. I'm not saying that that's the sole reason they'll commit. I'm saying if you're an offensive player and they have a five-star quarterback with the ability Nico Iamaleava has, that's an enticing offer to go and play with him, because he's a talented individual, and as offensive players, you want to play with a talented quarterback. Not only that, but he's an in-state kid, and that's the last thing you want, is when you're looking at this and all the other teams in this top battle are inevitably going to be in the SEC, you don't want to lose an in-state school and know for certain he's going to be in your conference at one time or another. So it's kind of a double down for Tennessee, really a triple down. For LSU, it's the start of the Brian Kelly era with the Tigers, and you want to start that off strong, and one of the ways to do that is build up the trenches, because that's what LSU is traditionally known for, is trench warfare, and that's something that we just didn't see from the Tigers last season. That's going to be a point of major emphasis for the Tigers, if I had to bet, this offseason, going through the summer, into fall, and finally into next season. But because of that, an individual such as Brycen Sanders needs to be at the very top of their priority list, as well as many other offensive linemen. But getting in Sanders as a top 300 guy is something you just simply don't argue with, especially trying to make sweeping changes that Brian Kelly will look to make. the best way to do that is build up your offensive line. And if you have a great offensive line, you can even give an average quarterback more time to make a play. I'm not saying you want an average quarterback. This is college football, and college football is moving much more offensive. You need a dynamic passer. My point here is that with an offensive line that gives your quarterback time, you can mask a lot of different things by just simply allowing him the ability to be able to see the field and make the play. And because of that, LSU is one we really have to watch. LSU is historically recruited well, but I'm really intrigued to see what Brian Kelly is able to do now that he's out of Notre Dame. He's in the SEC, and he has a bit more flexibility to how he's able to recruit. So because of that, LSU battles are ones we have to watch as college football fans in general. So that kind of goes without saying. Ole Miss is another one where Ole Miss offensively has done great things. Lane Kiffin as the head coach is one of the more exciting offensive play callers in the nation, at least to me. I love watching Ole Miss's offense, and that's coming from a defensive guy. I am a little bit biased being an Alabama fan because Lane Kiffin came in, revitalized Alabama's offense, and so because of that, I do have a bit of a soft spot when it comes to Lane Kiffin and watching his offenses because I think they're a ton of fun to watch. But if you're an offensive player, such as an offensive lineman, that's going to be enticing because you know that whenever you're on the field, that's when everybody's really watching because Ole Miss hasn't been able to get a defense that's really feared in college football. But you know that the eyes of the college football world are watching Ole Miss's offense, putting eyes squarely on you, and that's exactly where a lot of scouts are going to be looking, is the offensive side of the ball for Ole Miss. So this would be a big win for the Rebels as they try and get into a new offensive era absent Matt Corral, and a top offensive lineman would certainly be a nice way to try and do that. Even if he doesn't play this next year, it's about the start of something further. And finally, we have the Oklahoma Sooners, who also find themselves in a position where they're bringing in a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach. And the offensive coordinator they bring in is none other than Jeff Lebby, who has time under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Jeff Lebby has had high-flying, impactful offenses before, and whenever you look at his tree, it gets impressive to see the stylistic approaches he brings to the table. But more particularly, when you're looking at Oklahoma, you need to understand the presence of Bill Bedenbaugh. I've talked about this at length. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing so, but Bill Bedenbaugh has traditionally taken guys and been able to develop them, turn them into high-value draft picks, and guys that last a while in the NFL on that offensive line. That has been a really solid piece of the Oklahoma Sooners for quite some time, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere, especially with Schmitty coming back in the strength and conditioning program. I think that's going to be a marriage that works better than the previous one. Not saying anything negative about the previous one, just simply giving my opinion. So whenever you have Brycen Sanders that has OU in their top 4, this makes sense, especially when Sanders is coming off of a weekend visit to the Sooners. OU is generating some buzz on the trail, and at this point in the year where you haven't had to play a game with your new coaching staff, that's all you can recruit off of is hype. So there's nothing wrong with doing so. And similarly that I said for Tennessee, when Tennessee has a 5-star quarterback, OU may not have a 5-star quarterback in this class, but Jackson Arnold is within striking distance of that 5-star rating. He's an individual that when I did my quarterback video a few days ago, I was saying I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him finish up in 5-star range. If he has a good season this next coming season, if he camps well through the camps, you could see him jump to that 5-star status, especially because he plays in a very competitive division with a lot of eyes on it here in North Texas, right here in my city of Denton. So that's a guy we've got to keep an eye on, but that same line of argumentation I gave for Tennessee about how recruits are excited to play with these top-tier quarterbacks continues over for Jackson Arnold, and especially with a young offensive coordinator such as Jeff Lebby, there's a lot going for the Oklahoma Sooners, especially with them coming off of a visit that Brycen Sanders has got to like. But at the end of the day, we need to keep an eye on this because all of these institutions are going to be trying very hard to lift him out of Tennessee, while the Tennessee Volunteers try very hard to keep him home. But because of that, I can't wait to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, let me know where you ultimately think he goes. That's it. See ya.